Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov to those of you who are in the United Kingdom, to those of you in the rest of the world. A happy Yom HaAtzmaut. Though we, Talmidim of Harav Peretz, say Hallel yesterday, because the fifth day of Iyar is always the day that we observe the religious aspects of Yom HaAtzmaut, and nonetheless the rest of the world, and Am Yisrael are celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut today. And I bless Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, the state of Israel, the leaders of the state of Israel, Bakol Mikol Kol, everyone involved in the revival of the Jewish people in their homeland. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should watch over them and protect them and guide them, preserve them, and put them on the path that will bring Am Yisrael closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'ezrat Hashem. We are in what for me is a bit of an emotional class, because it's going to be the final one, at least in my mind, and last time I said this, we ended up doing another series about it, but the final one in the writings of Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine. It is not the final class in the Shiviti UK classes. In fact, B'ezrat Hashem, 1 week from tomorrow, my family will be arriving in London for a week, B'ezrat Hashem Dvarach. But at least in this series, which has been spanning a number of years, we're going to finally finish this introduction to the writings of Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine, found in the third volume of his Keter Shem Tov. Do me a favor and turn to page 31 in the Roman numerals, which would be page 29 in the PDF numbers. And let's continue from where we left off last week. We are going to recap what we spoke about last week. We spoke about some painful instances where Sephardim and Ashkenazim are divided in ways that are already uncomfortable. See, it doesn't matter. You say La Omer, Ba Omer. It doesn't matter if you are going to eat borekas on Shabbat or gefilte fish on Shabbat. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Those things are so trivial, they don't matter. But the things that do matter, the way in which we interact with each other. Are we able to eat in each other's homes? And for those of you who say, well, it's not a problem. We, Sephardim and Ashkenazim, we eat each other's homes. Not all of us. And even if all of us. What about Pesach? Pesach is a source of much pain for many families. Someone's child marries out in either direction. Out, I say sarcastically, of course. And no longer can we come to Abba Nima's house or to Abi and Zaydi's house or wherever it might be, or they can't come to my house. That's a painful division that exists in Am Yisrael. Weddings. People marry each other, except for some extreme people like me. Except for some extreme people, everyone marries everybody, Baruch Hashem. Okay, Halavai, that's the world. We're in a post-Tu B'Av world. But what about the food at the wedding? What about this one coming week? Are we able to get married on Lag Ba'omer? Do we have to wait for Lad Ba'omer on the 34th day? Are we following Shulchan Aruch? Are we following the Ramah? Maybe we get married the whole Omer. Maybe we don't get married any part of the Omer. Maybe we wait until after Shavuot. What happens then? And then families again are forced to make decisions that separate them based on some matter of where you come from ethnically. This is a big deal. And said Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine, "Umi liyadenu ייתקע כאשר ישוב אדוני וירחמנו להשיב לנו את ארצנו ארץ ישראל." Who will bless us that when we return back to our homeland in Eretz Israel? איך יהיה אפשר שנתאחד יחד? How would it be possible that we can all come together? Hem benosach hatefilot, for example, regarding the nosach of the prayers. Look, I'm running a Shabbaton in a couple of weeks. I'm already thinking, which nosach do we pray? I don't care. But maybe we want to all pray together. Maybe somebody wants to be a chazan. Maybe someone wants to read the Torah. Now, in my Beit HaKnesset, what do? Everybody who goes up gets to sing how they want or read how they want. But at the end of the day, there is a siddur that we all use. We want to be able to announce the same page numbers. You're going to, as a group, you're going to do something. What happens then? What happens when Am Yisrael gets together? A Shabbaton is no big deal. We're all friends. What happens when all of Am Yisrael gets together in one country? What do we do then? Which nosach is Birkat Kohanim at the Kotel on Chol HaMoed? V'hen bechol hadinim v'mishpatim asher tichlei ha'yirah ma'achilam. All the laws and the practices, maybe even the customs, there are so many things that we differ on, that who's going to be able to unite us in Eretz Yisrael? So what happens I learned that certain people, and I'm sure my wife, the Rabbanit, can share with us that in psychology there's a term for it. I've noticed that certain people, when the conversation gets awkward, everyone has a different way to cope with awkward conversations. I enjoy awkward conversations. I enjoy controversial conversations. Some people, they're not like me. Some people, the moment that things get a little bit too hot, they're not sure what to do anymore. So what do? I have a relative. I always joke that whenever the topic gets a little too controversial for him, he begins singing nigunim. I know what he sings. All of a sudden the Shabbat songs start. Why? Because he doesn't want to hear it. Okay, I'm guilty of that sometimes too, but not when I am feeling awkward. But for example, this Shabbat, we had a guest in the community, started talking about the president, the prime minister, the congressman. I don't care about politicians at my Shabbat table. So what did I do? Let's start singing something. I don't want to hear about the politicians at my Shabbat table. But there are other people, what do they do when the conversation gets awkward? Oh, B'ezrat Hashem, Mashiach will come. Okay, fine. Let's go. Mashiach will come and what's Mashiach going to do? He's now going to decide what? There's going to be a magical Mashiach riding on a pony, going to show up at the Am Yisrael. I'm here. Let's go with the story. He's going to come and say, this is the Siddur we're going to use. This is the way we're going to do Shechita. This is the way. And everyone magically is going to agree that that's the way that we should do it, and Shalom Alisana. I'm sure that for many people, that seems like a very likely scenario. Forgive me if I sound like I doubt that, or maybe a little bit sarcastic. Maybe we should wait for Eliyahu Hanavi. And Eliyahu Hanavi is going to help us with all of the doubts that we have. Don't worry when Mashiach comes. Don't worry when Mashiach comes. It's already shagul befi tinokot shel bnei Rabban or bet Rabban. We have already the young children. When Mashiach comes this, when Mashiach comes that. When Mashiach comes, all the ice cream will be free. When Mashiach comes, Mashiach is going to do a lot of amazing things. Everyone puts all of the Jewish people's problems on when Mashiach comes. Hu yatir lanu hasifekot. And he will come and answer all of the doubts that we have. Kemo shekatvu rabotenu zichronam livracha, like our rabbis of blessed memory wrote in Masechet Menachot, Parasha zo atid Eliyahu ledor sham. A certain issue there that the HaShamayim didn't want to get into, or they felt it was too problematic of a verse. They said that Eliyahu Hanavi will come and he will explain to us what it means. By the way, Eliyahu Hanavi coming, does that mean Mashiach? That's a question. Now you're able to provide answers. I told you I like awkward pauses. What does it mean when Eliyahu Hanavi comes? Okay, I'm going to leave it now. Let's leave it now that Eliyahu Hanavi seems to be synonymous with the Mashiach. V'chen amru, and our rabbis also told us in Masechet Berachot, L'chshiyavo Eliyahu v'yomer iha v'kiviuta. Eliyahu Hanavi will come and tell us whether this counts as a meal. Are you familiar with this tractate in the Talmud Masechet Berachot regarding wine? The Chachamim are in a debate there whether or not wine, somebody who really enjoys wine and who really becomes satiated with wine. In English, we have words for those people, but let's just say the person who truly enjoys their wine. Maybe after they finish drinking wine, they should say Birkat Hamazon. Maybe it's considered Kiviut Seudah. It's establishing a meal on wine. Say Chachamim, okay, that's not the halakha. When Eliyahu Hanavi comes, if he convinces us that the wine will be a meal, we'll talk to him then. V'chen shema yavo Eliyahu v'tarena. In Masechet Pesachim, there's a question about around the altar, the Mizbeach, there was a place that they would throw. I don't know this. They would throw the dead birds that were invalidated there. They would rot, and in any case, maybe Eliyahu Hanavi will come and solve that problem. You see many times in rabbinic literature that when the rabbis reach a dead end, they say, "Hey, Eliyahu Hanavi will come and help us out." V'chen imatza shetar ben shtarotav ve'eno yodea ma tivo yeh munach ad shevo Eliyahu. If there's a question in money, you're not sure if this money belongs to you, to somebody else, or some kind of halachic doubt. There's a sugya about this in Masechet Bava Metzia. Two people they leave their money, Erev Shabbat, let's say, with an innkeeper. The innkeeper had a safe, he keeps everyone's money, you give 100, that person gives 200. You come back and there's an argument about who the difference of the money belongs to. We say the money stays in the safe until Eliyahu HaNavi will come and answer the question. So really everybody loses. But what's the point? The point is maybe people shouldn't make false claims, because false claims can lead to your assets being frozen. There is value in that. So maybe in that particular sugya, it wasn't actually intended to pin it on Eliyahu HaNavi. The particular sugya was going to say, if you're trying to take someone else's money, you might lose your money too. And maybe it's better for you to be honest, because the person who's holding onto the cash has the right to freeze your assets. In Hebrew, they use a word for a tie, like when two people are tied together, not with a rope. There's a competition, a soccer game. They get in a 5 points and 5 points. What do they call that? Do you know the modern Hebrew word for that? I have some people here who speak Hebrew. אבל תגיד עוד פעם. Okay, tiko, teko. Ashkenazim say teku. What does this word mean? It means tied, but not in the Talmud. We use it sometimes when you get to a dead end. The rabbis say teko. We don't know what we're going to do. Some say uvayot. Then I was going to say, Rabbani, that there are those who want to say that teko stands for tishbi taretz kushot uvayot. The tishbi, Eliyahu HaNavi is the tishbi, right? Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu ha-Tishbi, Eliyahu ha-Giladi. Eliyahu has a few titles, and one of them is the Tishbi. Eliyahu will come and he'll answer this problem. Now that works maybe in some halachic matter. What does your soccer game have to do with Eliyahu HaNavi? Okay, so the Israelis appropriated a word. It's fine. It's not the first time. Zehu binyan hatarat הספקות והבעיות שלו הופשטו. So Eliyahu HaNavi, says Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine, will come and help us with all of the halachic dilemmas that we have, that we're literally at a dead end. There's no way to figure out through logic or through rational reasoning what we're going to do. So what happens next? We wait for Eliyahu HaNavi. Nichyeh v'nireh. Let's wait and see. Aval inyan halacha. But regarding halacha, enat tiluya biyad Eliyahu. Eliyahu HaNavi has no jurisdiction over Jewish law. Sounds audacious? Of course it's audacious. But it's the truth. Halakha doesn't work like that. Lo b'shamayim hi, the Torah is not in heaven. We're going to discuss in just a moment. Who decides halakha? Ela biyad da'at hanosi'im v'notenim bidvar halakha. Hayu nishmaot az, כשהיו מיוסדות על אדני ההיקש ההגיוני או על הסברה השכלית. When we determine halakha, the only people who determine halakha are those who give and take in halakha. Those people who are involved in the halakhic conversation. And what tools do they use? Either logical comparisons to other existing halachot, or through logic, through reason. אבל אם בא נביא אחד, but if a prophet comes along, אף שהוא נתאמת שהוא נביא אמת, even if he's a real prophet. I mean, I'm not talking to you about a fake prophet, some guy you found in Times Square, holds a sign, beware, the end is near, repent now, Messiah is coming. I'm not talking about that guy. A real Navi, a real prophet, he comes and he's approved of by the Sanhedrin. V'amar, and he says, כך נתגלה לי מן השמיים, I received this message of halakha from heaven. En shomein lo beze, we don't listen to him in this matter. Ki bidvar Torah v'chokhmah, because in matters of Torah and in matters of wisdom, en shofet tzedek b'sechel hayashar asher chanano Elohim la'adam. That we only use our righteous judgment when determining matters of halakha. Ve'amru kadmonenu, and our earlier rabbis say, Masechet Bava Batra, Chacham adif min navi. We prefer a chacham, a sage, over a navi, a prophet. I once taught a shiur about that. I don't know if you remember. It's been a few years. What it means, chacham adif min navi. Let's try to explain, maybe. and a pshat of azcha. We prefer, our sages, meaning we prefer rational logic, thinking, normal halachic conversation over prophecy. Any day. We'll take that any day. Now, perhaps if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, look at the generation of our prophets. People always say, if they were prophets today, if they were prophets, okay, maybe if they were prophets. But when you talk about prophets and you look in the Tanakh and you read the stories of the Nevi'im, how many idol worshippers? How many murderers? How many backstabbers? How many horrible people? How many kings leading the Jewish people astray? How many horrible things? The prophets are trying to warn us. Keep the Torah, or we'll destroy the Beit HaMikdash. Gone once, gone twice. Keep the Torah, you'll go to exile. Exile once, exile twice. We're still here. All day long, the prophets, Yechezkel, Yirmiyahu, Yeshayahu, name the prophet. They're busy trying to get the Jewish people to follow basic things like don't worship idols. Stop killing your children. And they can't do it. They can't do it. Along come Chachamim. But Nevi'im contribute to us something incredible. If you've read prophecies, I'm thinking of the prophets I just mentioned, for Yeshayahu and Yechezkel, for example. The prophecies of the future, I just sent, someone sent me a message, and I sent them a pasuk back. And one day there'll be water bursting out of the Harabait. What does it mean? There are visions the prophets had of beautiful things happening, and the world is going to be different, and the sky and the stars and the nations and peace and unity. And that's the contribution of the Nevi'im to our literature. I'm not going to disrespect our sages, but if you look in the writings of our Chachamim, what did they contribute to us? There are 613 biblical mitzvot. Our rabbis also gave us some mitzvot. Do you know some of the mitzvot our rabbis gave us? Sure. Nobody knows any rabbinic mitzvot? I think today people are fear. Don't eat meat and milk together. Very good. Okay, so that's an extra stringency on top of existing law. Who said? I heard a voice saying something else.
7 total.
I say it again.
Mitzvot Rabbanan are 7 in total.
There are 7 mitzvot Rabbanan. This is Chacham Shimon. Welcome to the shiur from the other side of the planet. Can you tell me a few of those mitzvot? Shabbat candles. No, Chanukah, Netilat Yadayim I'm going to throw in there. Yeah, we got, those are the mitzvot. Tell me, in terms of contribution of, wow, look how incredible rabbinic contribution has been. I mean, even go later in the generations. How many cups of hot water you could use to make your tea on Shabbat afternoon. Like really intense visions for humanity, for the world, for where we're going as a nation. I once saw, and I believe it was in the writings of Rav Kook, alav shalom. What does it mean, Chacham Adif Minavi? He says, if you look at the generation of the prophets, they were so focused on the big picture, on this macro image of Judaism. Unity in the world, no more war against each other, beautiful things happening in the future. That while they were focused on those visions, nobody was really managing the people. The people, most people are not cut out for these visions for humanity. Most people need to know, Rabbi, what do you want me to do now? Am I allowed to make the tea? I'm not allowed to make the tea. Stop telling me about what's going to happen in the temple now, that from fires from the heaven. It doesn't interest me right now. I need to can I have my hot chocolate or not? The Nevi'im were so focused on the big picture that pretty much lost control of the people. And then Chachamim almost didn't focus on the big picture at all. I'm not saying there are no Chachamim that did not focus on, there were not any Chachamim that didn't do that. I'm not saying that. But the Chachamim, for the most part, their contributions, every single detail that you know in Halakha came to us from the Chachamim. All the minute details, the attention to those details, the stringencies, leniencies, loopholes. When the Jewish people's lives were managed, wow. You know, we might not know, we might know Jews who don't observe Shabbat, who don't eat kasher, worshipping idols, sacrificing their children to Molech, murdering their spouses, dismembering them, crazy things you read in the Nevi'im. We don't have any of that in most of rabbinic literature and history. Therefore, Chachamim say we prefer the Chacham model over the Navi model. There's value to that. That's a secondary level. So the pshat is we just prefer logic over divine revelations. Second, there's value to focusing on the people and therefore bringing the people to a place where one day they can appreciate the macro. And that's why our rabbis tell us that one day we will have a Mashiach. And a Mashiach will be someone who's both a Navi, a prophet, and a Chacham, and a sage. One day we'll be able to do both. You don't have to always choose between two things. We'll have both. We'll have both the macro and the micro. Am Yisrael will be functioning normally as a nation, and we'll be able to partake in part of the bigger picture of the world. I just started a very exciting series in my Beit Knesset on Shabbat afternoons. In the writings of Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg. Eliyahu ben Amozeg was the chief rabbi of Leghorn, Livorno, Italy. He wrote a book called Israel and Humanity. The visions that he has for the future of the world, Jews, Christians, Muslims, among others. Listen, you can call him a crazy person. You can call him a dreamer. You can call him out of touch with reality. Whatever you want to call him names. But when I read the writings of Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg, I feel like, wow, we're getting closer to having Chachamim who are also prophets. Not prophets, and prophets in their ability to think beyond. I sometimes feel that when I read the writings of Harav Uziel or Harav Kook, certain Chachamim that were, their minds saw more than just this book that was right in front of them. We'll merit B'ezrat Hashem to leadership like that. When we become worthy of it, we will have leadership like that. ומצאנו הלכה למעשה, we find in a practical case of הלכה, שלא השגיחו בדבר תורה על כל האותות והמופתים שעשה רבי אליעזר. In מסכת בבא מציעא, there's a famous war that happened with Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkonos and the Chachamim. Do you remember the story? Someone want to tell me about Tanuro shel Achnai? The oven. Tell me the story about the oven.
It's a question of Tumah and Tohara, or an oven that was, so to say, disassembled in a certain manner.
Very good.
And it was still accepting flour.
And they got in a fight, and then what happens? Rabbi Eliezer is convinced he's right, and the rabbis say he's wrong. So what happens?
He requests heavenly signs to prove that he's correct.
So Rabbi Eliezer says, let the water flow backwards, let the tree uproot itself from the ground, let the walls of the Beit Midrash fall down, and all of those things happen. And the rabbis insist he's still wrong. And finally a voice comes out of it. The rabbis tell him, listen, Lo HaShamayim hi, Torah is not determined in heaven. The Torah was given to us on earth. You can't use miracles to prove your point. And a voice comes out of heaven, according to rabbinic literature, and says, Nitzchuni banai nitzchuni. My sons have defeated me. They've defeated me. This whole story of Lo HaShamayim hi deserves many, many, many shiurim with very deep insights. There's a lot to learn here. Obviously, the story is not intended to be taken literally in this way. But there are a few lessons you can take out of it. One of them is, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how great you are. Can you imagine, and I know you can't imagine because we have no such thing going on in Judaism right now, but could you imagine that every guy who claims to have visions from God or from an angel or from some rabbi, he comes to us and changes the way we practice Judaism? Could you imagine if that was the case? It would be crazy. We'd be living in a insane asylum. Are you allowed to say that in 2024? We'd be living in a crazy world. And therefore, our Chachamim say we must regulate halakha. Halakha works by the rules of halakha. We don't decide law based on supernatural occurrences, be they real, if they're fake, if they're hallucinations, or if they're illusions. It doesn't matter. We decide law based on legal basis and legal thought and legal reasoning. V'gam bat kol min HaShamayim lo ho'il lano. Even the voice from heaven couldn't help him. ולא יטו אליה האוזן בבית המדרש עד שעמד רבי יהושע על רגליו ואמר לו בשמיים היא שכבר תורה, I'm on the next page, ניתנה בהר סיני. The Torah was already given on Mount Sinai to the Jewish people. אין אנו משגיחין בבת קול, and therefore we don't care what the voices from heaven say. The jurisdiction over the Torah is ours. The Torah is now in our domain. If God wanted it, he could have kept it. He gave it to us. By the way, this relationship of two entities, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, not God throwing the Torah on us and forcing us to follow it, but as I've spoken about in previous shurim, not in this playlist, but in other ones. For example, the Shiviti Beit Midrash in New York. The fact that we have entered a bilateral covenant with the creator of the universe equally, out of our own free will, that both parties in this contract are obligated, have responsibilities, repercussions. That is something that no other faith on this earth claims. So when a religious person hears, wow, we argue with God because he gave you the Torah and you could do what you want with it, it's not that simple. But yes, we're a pretty audacious people. We don't even fit into the category of regular religious people. We're not part of a religion. We're part of a one-of-a-kind system that exists nowhere else on this earth. אחרי רבים להטות כתיב. עיין בירושלמי, look in the Yerushalmi. Now, I have to say, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't own an actual hard copy of the Talmud Yerushalmi. But I do have a hard copy of the Torah Temimah, which quotes this Yerushalmi. If I could just open it up for a minute. The Yerushalmi says the following. Rabbanit, maybe it's time for me to buy myself Talmud Yerushalmi.
The perfect time because your birthday is in 2 days.
Baruch Hashem. I always say, I keep buying books. I'm going back to Israel any minute, and then I'm going to have to pay for all the shipping to come back. But I guess while we're still here in Galut, we might as well have books. Al pi haTorah, the Torah tells us, Al pi haTorah asher yorucha, ועל המשפט אשר יאמרו לך תעשה, לא תסור מן הדבר אשר יגידו לך ימין ושמאל. As you know in Parashat Shofetim, in the book of Devarim, chapter 17, verse 11, if there is a law, yipale mimcha davar, if there's a law that you're not sure about, there is no logical way to determine this law. You go to the Kohen, to the Levi, to the judges of that time, to the Sanhedrin, and you ask them what the law is, and whatever they determine the law is, whether they tell you right or left or right, you listen to what they tell you. Now, you should know, Chacham Fa'ur mentions in one of his footnotes in his book, I believe it was, in the Horizontal Society. I'm almost certain. There is a Gemara that argues with this notion and says, it's not if the rabbis tell you that left is right or that right is left, so you must listen to them. That's what most commentaries here say. But to the contrary, you listen to the rabbis unless they tell you that left is right or right is left. The moment they tell you something that is so unable to be accepted, that's forbidden for a person to accept. And whether or not that's actually the way that we interpret that Talmud, the fact that that interpretation exists is crucial to, again, understanding our relationship with rabbinic interpretation of law. Al pi Torah, says the Talmud Yerushalmi, Masechet Berachot, chapter 1, halakha daled, Navi v'zaken lema hem domin. If there's a prophet and an elder, what are they similar to? Lemelech sheshalach shnei, I don't know how to pronounce this word, pelamterin shelo lamdina, lechad ben katav, im eino mare lachem chotam sheli, al ta'aminu lo. ולאחד כתב, אף על פי שאינו מראה לכם חותם שלי, תאמינו לו. He sends the king 2 messengers out to the people, and he says to one of them, to the people, he says, if this person comes to you without my seal, don't listen to him. So, but if this person comes to you, even if he doesn't have my seal, listen to him. Kach ben aviktiv, by a prophet it says, v'natan elecha otu mofet. He has to bring before you, it's a reading of the verse in the Reh, he has to bring before you a sign or a wonder. Baram hachaktiv, but here in the Torah it says, Al pi haTorah asher yorucha, that you do what the rabbis determine that you do. Meaning what? The prophet has to prove himself. He has to do signs and wonders. The Chachamim, their jurisdiction is clear. We listen to them regardless of whether they perform signs or wonders. So who is preferable? Always the Chachamim over the prophet who doesn't need to prove himself. The Chachamim who don't need to prove themselves over the prophet who does. And he explains, HaKavanah bazeh, the intent behind this teaching of Chachamim and Talmud Yerushalmi, Eno tzarich ot u'mofet, ki en somechin al ha'ot ve'amofet, b'makom shu neged ha'sechel b'dvar Torah v'chokhmah. We never listen to signs or wonders in place of logic or reason in matters of Torah and wisdom. V'im hu maskim el ha'sechel, and if the things that the person is telling us, the sage is telling us, they're logical and they're reasonable and they sit well with us, halol u'motar ha'ot ve'amofet. Why do I need miracles? What is the purpose of showing miracles? If you're right, you're right. You don't have to prove that you're right. And if you're wrong, it doesn't matter all the miracles that you can do. It's still not going to help me be convinced that you're correct. Ayen HaRambam, Sherich B'zeh B'tuvtam V'dat. Look in the Rambam, in the commentary in the Mishnah, but especially in the 9th chapter of the laws of Yisodei Torah, the fundamentals of the Torah. And I did think that there was going to be a chance that I would sit here and go through the 9th chapter with you, but I don't believe that my time today will allow for that. So at the end of the day, what are we saying? Even if Eliyahu Navi comes tomorrow, what jurisdiction does he have over Jewish law? There is nothing practically that he can do for us that we cannot do ourselves. And if we're waiting for him to do the work that we can do ourselves, we're waiting for nothing. And if we're not willing to do the work for ourselves, then even if he comes, it doesn't help us at all. And that's why I titled this class, Mashiach Won't Help. Because everyone is putting all the heavy stuff on the Mashiach. Who says the Mashiach can help you? Mashiach has certain jobs. One of them is not this one. Now this next word, I have to tell you, I've seen it in the Zohar, but not in the rabbinic literature that I'm familiar with, and I don't know what it means. Honestly, if I have to be honest with you. But linyan shinuye, it could be a typo. Linyan, or maybe I was thinking it could have to do with the word let's return. I'm not sure. Linyan shinuye haminhagim shezacharnu. Regarding the changing of minhagim that we mentioned earlier. לא יהיה בכוח אליהו להכריע אם מנהג ספרד הוא הנכון או מנהג אשכנז הוא הצודק. Eliyahu Navi is not going to have the ability to tell us whether the minhag of the Sephardim is correct or the minhag of the Ashkenazim is correct. How do I know? יש להביא ראיה לזה. מיד דשנינו בגמרא. It's something that we should bring a proof to from that which we study in the Talmud. The Talmud in Masechet Yevamot. Tell me what the story of the Yibum is. What happens by Yibum? Or Chalitza. Tell me what these halachot are.
An individual dies with no children, and his wife or wives are semi-tied to his brother or brothers until one of them decides to marry one of them or decides to release one of them.
Okay, very good. Meaning, there is a mitzvah that when a man dies with no children, that his wife should marry his brother in order to be able to have children to his name from her. Now, that's the process of yibum, the marriage, or chalitza is the process of freeing her from this situation so she can go marry who she wants. Why do we call chalitza chalitza? Because we take off a shoe. It's a whole process with a shoe. Has anyone here ever seen chalitza done in real life? I was in a bedin in Yerushalayim with Rabbi Eliyahu Abergel. Should live and be well. My friend Rabbi Yitzchak Abitbol of Florida used to be in Yerushalayim, a student of Rabbi Eliyahu Abergel, and he invited me once to watch a chalitza ceremony. I will tell you, the most unusual thing I've observed in my life. But it exists, people do it, and that's this ceremony of chalitza has to do with taking off of a shoe. Im yavo Eliyahu, our Chachamim say, if Eliyahu Hanavi will come, v'yomar, and he says, en choletzin b'min'al, that we do not do chalitza with a shoe. Shomein lo, we listen to him. En choletzin b'sandal, en shomein lo. But if he tells us not to take off a sandal for chalitza, we don't listen to him. Shekvar nahagu ha'am b'sandal, because the nation already has a custom to do chalitza with a sandal. Now, if you wanted to get here into some nitty-gritty details, we could interpret this differently. Also, I'm not sure that min'al and sandal mean sandal and shoe the way we understand those words today. More like a hard shoe and a soft shoe, if I were talking out loud. In any case, you find that the minhagim of the Jewish people are not going to be able to be changed by the Eliyahu Navi. Whether it's because he doesn't have the right to, or because the Jewish people simply are not going to listen to him. It doesn't matter. But we find precedent in the Talmud that our Chachamim don't believe that the Eliyahu Navi is going to be able to have any influence at all on the way the Jewish people observe Judaism. וכן מצינו בעניין כתיבת תפילין על גבי אור של דג טהור. אם מותר הוא, אם לאו. The same thing is found regarding writing tefillin on the skin of a kosher fish. So a kasher fish technically should be allowed to be used for tefillin. I actually have a picture of tefillin. One second. So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to bring it up to the camera without making Yitzhak upset. Here you have, on this page, you have parchment that is made out of salmon skin. Ultimately, we don't make salmon skin or any fish skin, even if it's kasher, into stam. Why? We don't make it the Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzot. Why?
It's nasty.
Right, מפני שאין, I think it's שאין פוסקת זהומתה לעולם. The zihum, the smell or the nastiness of it doesn't ever leave. Like a dead fish is a dead fish is a dead fish. It doesn't ever get better after that. You may wear a leather jacket and you don't know that it smells like a dead cow carcass because that's not what it smells like anymore. You may, I can give you examples. I don't need to give you examples. In any case, if Eliyahu Navi comes and he says that you, imutahu imlav, that you can or cannot write on the skin of a fish, אמר לי אם יבוא אליהו ויאמר ושאלו שם בגמרא מה אם יבוא אליהו? Okay, it says, let's wait for the Eliyahu Navi to come determine whether we can write it or not. The question there really had to do with, does it smell or not? There was an argument in reality. Some rabbi said, no, the fish smell goes away. Some says it doesn't go away. So one of the Chachamim said, okay, let's wait for Eliyahu to come and smell. He'll tell us if the smell went away. מה אם יבוא אליהו? And the rabbi said, what does it matter if the Eliyahu Navi comes? And Rashi explains, I'm not sure this is the exact interpretation that should be used in the Gemara, but this is what Rashi says. Rashi פירש שם, היתר ואיסור אין תלוי בו דלא בשמיים היא. Matters of heter and isur, matters of halakha, are not going to be determined by Eliyahu Hanavi. That's not in heaven anymore. That's going to be something the rabbis have to figure out on their own. They cannot ask Eliyahu Hanavi for help. He's not a person who's able to get involved in this matter. So what do you see from all of this? Maybe I'm depressing everybody because all of the hope that we had for a normal world when Mashiach comes, what does it mean? If Eliyahu Hanavi cannot do it, what does it mean for us? So he says in the next paragraph, let's read. Im ken, hadavar talui banu. If so, the matter is dependent solely on us. Im HaKadosh Baruch Hu bano yivneh lanu betenu alumi be'eretz Yisrael. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu will build us our homeland in Eretz Yisrael. I told you, look at the bottom of the page. Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine is writing this, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 1948. That is, I'm going to tell you when it is. It's exactly 1 month and 5 days before the founding of the State of Israel. It says, if we merit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will allow for us to rebuild our national homeland in Eretz Yisrael, v'yashiv lanu et haaretz kasher nishba la'avotenu, and He returned us our homeland like He promised to our forefathers. Hatzad harishon, the first step that we must make, yeh la'achzir ha'atara ateret ha'sanhedrin limkoma. We have no choice but to reconvene the crown of the Sanhedrin to its place. Ke'en Knesset HaGedolah, like a great assembly that we once had, asher yu nifcharim al yidei ha'olam ha'Yisraeli, which will be chosen by the Jewish people. Now, we've had shiurim here in the UK classes on the tail end of COVID when I was still filming in our other Beit HaKnesset. We spoke a lot about the Sanhedrin and the different attempts to revive the Sanhedrin and the questions that we have on how are we practically going to be able to get the Jewish people to get behind the Sanhedrin? Who will sit in the Sanhedrin? Who can represent all of the Jewish people? V'yu anshe midot tovot. They must be people of good character traits. Chachamim gedolim b'chukhmat haTorah, tremendous scholars of the Torah. Anshe emet, truthful people. Sonei betza, people who hate money. They once asked the Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, they asked him, Rabbi, where are we going to find Talmidei Chachamim that hate money? And he said, don't worry, for the right amount of money, you can find Torah scholars who hate money. והם בכוחם ימצאו תרופה להמון שינוי המנהגים אשר בין יהודה ובנימין. And they, and only they, one authoritative body elected by the Jewish people to solve this exact problem, will be able to bridge all of the gaps between Yehuda and Binyamin. Why does he mention Yehuda and Binyamin? Why? What imagery is he trying to bring up here? Who is Yehuda to Binyamin? I don't mind awkward pauses.
They were the two remaining tribes of the southern kingdom.
So there were two remaining tribes. I think then he should have said Yehuda and Israel, no, the rest of the Jewish people that were gone in the 10 tribes.
One would think, yes.
So any guesses, Chacham Shimon, why he would say this? There's no right answer. I have theories. Let me suggest two. One, I think he's dealing about a pre-Messianic age, in which case maybe the 10 tribes won't come back. The only ones that are left are Yehuda and Binyamin, practically. One. Two, I think there's, in my mind, when I hear Yehuda and Binyamin trying to get together, trying to solve their differences, it's the big brother and the little brother. All of us have siblings, all of us have family members, all of us have people that we're related to, but we sometimes struggle to communicate properly with or get along with properly. Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine is trying to bring out this image of the big brother and the little brother getting together again, being able to talk it all out, to become one. And every Jewish person will then be obligated to listen to them. Uzgulat Am Yisrael, and the chosenness, the specialness of the Jewish people, and there's a hard way to translate Zgula, Shelemut ha'achdut, it is the complete and proper unity. Komro, like it says in the Divrei Hayamim, Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz, the Jewish people are one nation in the world. Hen mitzad heyatenu am yuchad, because we are a special nation, ve'oleh b'chashivut kol yeter ha'amim, and perhaps because we were chosen in a way that is more important than the other nations of the world. V'chen amar Bilam, and like Bilam said, Hen am levadad yishkon. Bilam says in Bamidbar that we are a nation that will dwell in solitude. Hakavanah, he means shemachamat kedushato mishar ha'amim, am zeh shochen levadad. Because we are differentiated in our holiness from the rest of the world, we will be alone. V'lazeh lo yitchashev bagoyim shenimnei mahem. And therefore we won't be counted in the nations of the world because we're not. Vayesod ve'amud הימיני של האומה הישראלית בלי ספק היא התאחדות, ההסכמה והשלום. The three things that the Jewish people need to get behind in order to bring about the end of times is התאחדות, unity, הסכמה, agreement, shalom, and peace. ועל זה נאמר, and about this it says, ויהי בישורון מלך, there will one day be a king in Yeshurun. Sorry, it makes me emotional. There will one day be a king in Yeshurun, B'ashrat Shechinato, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence will rest on us. B'hitasef Rashei Am. When will it happen? When the leaders of our nation will gather together. And then what will happen? V'achem yimshechu yachad kol shiftei Yisrael. And only afterwards, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return His presence to us. And then the leaders of the Jewish people are able to sit alongside each other and talk. Only then can the Jewish people, Moshcheni acharecha narutza, pull me behind you and I will run. The Jewish people will be able to run behind them. Va'az zikruyam banu, nevuat ben Amos. And then the prophecy of Ben Amos will come true for us. Who was Ben Amos? Yeshayahu. Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amos. V'ashiva shoftaich kevarishona, I will return your judges as they were. V'yoatzaich kevatechila, and your advisors as they were in the beginning. Acharei ken, and after this, yikareh lach ir hatzedek, I thought there's a word kirya here, but he just has ne'emana. I thought it's kirya ne'emana. They will call you the righteous city, the loyal one. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udvar Adonai miYerushalayim. And as Yeshayahu says, that one day from Zion will come forth Torah, and the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come from Yerushalayim. Tam v'nishlam hamavo. I've concluded this introduction, says Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine. Ra'o tireh mativo. See what is in it. Torat Elohim b'kirbo. The Torah of God is inside of it. U'v'kirbo yasim orbo, and he should put light in it. HaMechaber, the author, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Shanat HaTafshin Chet. The new month of Nisan, 1948. We're today in the 6th day of Iyar, 2024. And I'm reading these words, and initially, when I paused this course in the middle, it wasn't intentional, but I paused. My whole hope was to finish this chapter before Pesach, that year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and to say, look, we're in Rosh Chodesh Nisan, now let's finish this by Yom HaAtzmaut. Today I'm on Yom HaAtzmaut. I didn't plan it this way. It's how it happened. Today is Yom HaAtzmaut for most of the world. And you ask yourself the question, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has returned his presence to the Jewish people. The Jewish people are together. What's going to happen next? We're waiting for a Mashiach to come? Maybe. I believe every day that Kehillat can take place. But is he going to solve this problem? No. Even if he comes right now? Eliyahu Navi cannot solve this problem for us. It's not his jurisdiction, it's not his domain, it's not his problem. Whose problem is it? Mine? Yours? Ours? This Shabbat we still have to eat together. Next Shabbat we want to pray together. 3 weeks from now we want to get married to each other. Do you have time to wait for the Mashiach to come? Are we able to wait for the Eliyahu Navi? But these are the steps. Vayi b'shurun melech, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu returns his presence, his kingship to us. B'tasef rashei am, when the leaders of the nation will gather together. Yachad Shivtei Israel, the Jewish people will be united. Then all I see around me is discord, disunity. Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. Our rabbis are supposed to increase peace in the world. I'm speaking to myself also. How much achdut is lacking? What do I mean by achdut? I don't mean, let's put our hands together, go sing around a bonfire. That's not achdut. Achdut? When is the pain of being separated into different nations? It hurts me. It hurts me when someone comes to visit me and says, I love you. I can't eat your food because you are Sephardic. It hurts me when I tell someone, I really would love to eat that food, but I'm Sephardic, and those rules of Bishulei Goyim follow the Rama. That hurt keeps me awake at night all the time. And we have to ask ourselves the question, so when are we going to end it? Eliyahu Navi is not going to do it. The Mashiach will not help us. With other things, yes, but not with this. Ena davar talui ela banu. This matter, says Rabbi Shemtob Gaguine, is dependent only on us. When we started this Bet HaMikdash in the Shiviti Bet HaMikdash of the UK, and Baruch Hashem today I see that it's mamash not only people from the UK. Part of this dream of connecting people around the world, San Diego, Los Angeles, New York, Israel, Portland, Seattle, South Africa, all the places that we go and we go and we go and we go. I'm heading now next week on a 3-week trip, and people are like, you love traveling. I'm going to tell you something. I hate traveling. I hate packing suitcases. I get nervous getting in a trip. I leave my home. I leave my Kehillat. I leave everything that is I like to stay home, learn Torah, teach you. That's what I like to do. So why do we do it? Make money? I don't make money from it. I only lose. I'm already thinking now, what is my deficit going to be in 4 weeks' time from now? It's not Hashem. I'll help with that. So why do we do it? We do it because of this. If we still can't get all the leaders together, then at least let us be Yachad Shivtei Israel. Let us, tribes of Israel, who are willing to be together, let us be together. Let me go to every corner of the world. And Zachiti, and you also are Zoche, that our Rabbanit is the one who lets us do this, travels with me, is there for every single one of us, that we go everywhere that we can go. It's not because we're crazy. Maybe it is. Maybe people are crazy. We're crazy because the alternative of having a divided Jewish people, it's heartbreaking. And the more of us that we can get together and to be friends with each other and to learn Torah, because when you learn Torah with people, you quickly realize, I'm not Sephardic or Ashkenazi or Orthodox, or I'm not any of the, I'm a Jewish person. Ivri Anochi, I'm a Hebrew. I serve one God. And even that God, I don't always do it perfect. But let me not do it perfectly with you instead of opposite you. And what I'm asking you today on Yom Ha'atzmaut, some people celebrate like the Geulah is here. Some people mourn like the Geulah is far away. The Emet is somewhere in the middle. The Emet is the Geulah began. But we have so much work to do. And it's not the work of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That part he did. Gathered us. He gathered us. Look, I'm already a generation of people who left Israel. Lo alenu. I have to get gathered again. Who's going to gather me? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do miracles every day. Lo b'chol yom v'yom mitarachesh nisa. Masechet Megillah. Not every day HaKadosh Baruch Hu does miracles. The miracle will have to be myself. Some money and an airplane ticket. But while we're doing this, while HaKadosh Baruch Hu has set his hand in history and began to redeem the Jewish people, what can we do? Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't wait for Bita Sefer She'am. The leaders of the community, the leaders of our nation, politically, religiously, it seems that many of them, I don't want to say maliciously, enjoy the discord and the disunity, but maybe we can judge them favorably. They're just used to it. They don't think it can be any different. The hope is in us. We can show from the ground up. Look at us. We're just regular Jewish people who just regularly love each other, who just regularly learn together and eat together and will marry our children to each other. We want to raise our families in a better Jewish world than was yesterday. And if you want to come along for the ride, come. And if not, we'll do a proof of concept for you. We will show you that this can work. And then Bezrat Hashem, Uva L'Tzion Goel, U'Shaveh Pesha B'Yaakov. That Bezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring it to us a Redeemer to Tzion. And we all will go back to Eretz Yisrael. Na'aneh la'artzenu b'shira u'v'zimra, like the Paitan says, we'll go back to our homeland singing and dancing. Not because we're afraid of anti-Semitism, not because of the rockets or the riots on campus. We're going to go back to Eretz Yisrael b'shira u'v'zimra. Uvduye Adonai Yushuvun Uva'u L'Tzion Berina. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will redeem all of us people who are captives of Tzion. We are occupying illegally land outside of Eretz Yisrael. Our homeland is in Eretz Yisrael. And Uva'u Tzion Berina will return home to Yerushalayim, God willing, with singing and dancing. Simchat Olam and Roshan, Bezrat Hashem. Thank you so much for learning with me. Bezrat Hashem.